Have you ever had something you worked hard for destroyed? In an instant by someone who felt entitled to it? Have you ever stood in your own yard watching a neighbor rip down your fence like it was her personal obstacle course? Would you stay quiet or would you fight back? The morning it happened, I was sipping coffee enjoying the rare calm of a Saturday when I heard the splintering crack of wood. At first I thought it was construction nearby. But no, it was Karen, my neighbor, my nightmare. She was ripping apart the fence I had just built, piece by piece. Her reason, it blocked her shortcut. In that moment, I felt the sting of disbelief turn into anger. Who does that? Who decides someone else's property is theirs to destroy? Because it is inconvenient for them. But here's the thing. That was only the beginning. Because while Karen thought she was teaching me a lesson, I was already imagining the ending. An ending where the shortcut thief ended up trapped by her own arrogance. An ending she never saw coming. What started with shattered wood would spiral into a battle of property lines, HOA rules, and neighbors forced to take sides. And when it was over the same fence she tore down would become the cage that locked her in. So grab your coffee, sit back, because you are about to hear how entitlement met its match. The street I live on is one of those quiet, suburban neighborhoods that looks perfect on paper. Birds in the morning, lawns clipped to perfection, kids biking around like it is straight out of a family movie. But like every movie, there is always one villain lurking in the background. Ours came with bleached hair oversized, sunglasses, and a voice that carried through walls. Karen. I moved in a year before the fence incident. My property sat right on the edge of a corner lot where her house backed up against mine. Between us, a natural shortcut to the main road. Before I arrived, everyone in the neighborhood just sort of accepted that Karen used it as her personal runway, stomping across whichever patch of lawn or dirt she pleased. That is why I built the fence, not to keep people out, but to finally give myself a slice of peace. I did not think it would be controversial. I mean, who gets mad about someone putting up a boundary on their own property? Karen, that is who. The first warning sign came before the fence was even finished. She strutted over, eyeing the wooden posts like I had just committed some cardinal sin. You know, she said, tapping one post with her acrylic nail, this blocks the path. Yeah, I replied calmly, that is the idea. Her smile did not reach her eyes. It has always been open. You cannot just close it off. I shrugged. It is my yard, my property, so I can. That was the first time I saw it. The twitch, her lips pressed thin, her nostrils flared just slightly like I had just told her the world did not revolve around her. She turned on her heel and stomped off without another word. For a few weeks, I thought maybe that was it. She would grumble, gossip, maybe complain to her book club about me. But then the morning she tore it down, I realized I had underestimated her. When I confronted her after the destruction, she doubled down. You are the new guy. Nobody cares about your stupid fence. It is faster this way. My jaw tightened. She was not just ignoring my rights. She was rewriting the rules of the neighborhood. Rules where her convenience came first and my work meant nothing. Started noticing little things after that. Lawn clippings tossed suspiciously close to my driveway. Her dog accidentally leaving messes in my yard. The HOA newsletter, which he just happened to edit, suddenly featured a section about unsightly fences lowering property values. Coincidence? Not with Karen, and I should have known better because the fence, that was just the beginning. I wish I could tell you Karen stopped at tearing down my fence, but no, that was just the opening act. Because if there is one thing entitled, people hate more than boundaries, it is being reminded they do not make the rules. After that day, it felt like she had made me her personal project. The first week she filed an HOA complaint against me, not for the destroyed fence, of course. No, apparently my trash cans were left out too long on collection day, which was hilarious because I had rolled them in at 7 a.m. sharp. But the letter from the HOA was real. $50 fine. When I asked the HOA president, he looked embarrassed. Look, she is very vocal. It is easier to just process her complaints than argue with her. Easier for them, sure. For me, it was a tax on existing. The next week she escalated. I came home one afternoon to find her standing on my lawn, hands on her hips, berating a delivery driver who had dared to park near her shortcut. She was pointing at the posts, where my fence had once stood, declaring to anyone within earshot that I was closing off community access to my yard. I asked her to leave. She refused. I told her I would call the cops. She smirked and said, "Go ahead. I will just tell them you threatened me." That line stuck with me. Not just the words, but how casually she said it, like she had already rehearsed. And sure enough, 2 nights later, blue and red lights flashed outside my house. I opened the door to 2 officers. "Sir, we got a call about a disturbance. Possible threats made to your neighbor." My stomach sank. Karen was standing on her porch, arms folded, smiling like the devil. Luckily, I had the presence of mind to show the officers The footage from my doorbell cam. It caught her entire performance with the delivery driver, including her threat to lie. The cops gave her a warning that night, but they also gave me a piece of advice. Document everything. People like this. They do not just stop. And they were right. From there, it turned into a full-blown campaign. My sprinklers mysteriously got shut off, twice. Bags of trash showed up at the edge of my property. One morning, I found tire tracks cutting straight across my lawn as if someone had deliberately driven through it. Each time I suspected her. Each time she shrugged it off. Prove it, she would say. Meanwhile, her stories grew wilder. At the next HOA meeting, she claimed my fence had blocked emergency access. At another, she suggested I was harboring aggressive dogs. I do not even own a dog. The cherry on top, she started using the shortcut again. Only now she would stomp right across the broken posts of my destroyed fence, making eye contact with me through my window every time. A taunt, a declaration. It was not just disrespect anymore. It was psychological warfare. And the thing about warfare is eventually you reach a breaking point. For me, it came on a Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I saw her dragging a full grocery cart across my yard as if it were her personal highway. The wheels carved deep ruts into the soil I had just reseeded. Something snapped. I stood, walked to the edge of the porch, and said in the calmest voice I could manage, "Karen, this ends now." She froze mid-step, then gave me that smirk again. "You cannot stop me. Everyone uses this path. You will give up eventually." That is when it clicked. She was not just delusional. She was betting on exhaustion, on me folding under the constant pressure. But what she did not know, I had been documenting every incident, every fine, every trespass, every smear campaign. And as I stared at the trenches her cart left in my yard, an idea began forming. A way to end this once and for all. Not by yelling, not by matching her chaos, but by flipping the very rules she abused against her. Because if Karen loved shortcuts so much, I was about to give her one she would never forget. When people like Karen push you far enough, you learn two things. 1. Fighting fire with fire just leaves you burned. 2. The sharpest weapon is not anger, it is patience. So I stopped reacting. No more shouting matches across the lawn. No more angry emails to the HOA. Outwardly, I went quiet. Inwardly, I started building. Literally, step 1 was research. I pulled property records, maps, and old survey lines from the county clerk's office. And that is when I found it. The key detail. Karen never considered the shortcut she loved. So much did not just cut across my yard. It also ran along a thin strip of land owned by the city. And guess what? That strip was up for public auction. It took weeks of paperwork, a few strategic phone calls, and yes, a painful chunk of savings. But when the ink dried, I was not just the owner of my yard anymore. I now owned the entire narrow strip of land Karen called her shortcut. Every step she had arrogantly stomped was legally mine. That is when the real fun began. Step 2, the rebuild. Not just a fence this time, but a fortress of legality. Hired contractors to install a brand. New reinforced boundary line. Posts, deeper foundations. Clean black steel with a lockable gate. And just to add flair, I hung a gleaming sign right in the middle. Private property, no trespassing. The day it went up, Karen came storming out of her house, like she had been personally betrayed by the universe. "What is this?" she screeched. I smiled. "Oh, just a little upgrade. Keeps things clear. You cannot block this path. It is a right of way." Pulled a folded paper from my back pocket. "The deed." "Actually, I can." And I just did. Her eyes darted across the fence to the sign, back to the paperwork in my hand. For the first time, her voice wavered. "This is not fair. You are trapping me in." I tilted my head. "No, Karen, I am just keeping you where you belong." Step 3 was the finishing touch. I knew Karen would not stop with tantrums alone. She thrived on dragging others into her drama. So before she could spin her story, I went public. I shared the entire saga. Receipts, photos, HOA letters, doorbell footage, with the neighborhood group chat. Not ranting, just calmly laying out facts. The reaction was instant. Neighbors who had quietly tolerated her antics for years suddenly had a floodgate of validation. Stories poured out. Karen yelling at kids for chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Karen threatening to tow cars for parking too close to her driveway. Karen even scolding an elderly couple for hanging laundry outside. Turns out I was not her first victim. I was just the first to fight back. By the end of the week, the HOA inbox was flooded. Not with her complaints, but with complaints about her. For once, her power was cracking. And as I walked past that sturdy new fence each morning, coffee in hand, I felt a calm I had not felt in months. But the story was not over. Because the true climax was not just about Karen losing her shortcut. It was about what happened the moment she tried to defy the new boundary. I knew Karen well enough by then to expect it. She was not going to accept defeat quietly. Sure enough, 2 nights after the new fence went up, I caught movement on the security cameras. Karen armed with a crowbar creeping across her porch like some bargain bin cat burglar. She marched straight to the gate, muttering to herself, and started prying at the lock. What she did not realize was that I had been ready for this. The gate was not just any lock. It was reinforced, tamper-proof, and most importantly wired with a discreet alarm system that pinged my phone and the local, non-emergency police line. So while she wrestled with steel, I sipped tea inside and watched the drama unfold in glorious HD. Within minutes, headlights swept across the street. A patrol car rolled up, officers stepping out just as Karen yanked with all her weight and fell backward onto the grass, crowbar still in hand. The look on her face when the flashlight hit her, pure deer in the headlights panic. "Mom," the officer said, "care to explain why you are attempting to break into your neighbor's property at midnight?" She sputtered, pointing at my house. He trapped me. This is illegal. It is a community path." That is when I stepped outside, calm as ever, holding the deed like a holy relic. "Actually, officer, it is not a community path. It is my land. I purchased it legally. She is trespassing him again." The officer glanced at the paperwork, then at Karen, still clutching the crowbar, and sighed. "Mom, you are under arrest for vandalism and attempted trespass." The neighbors came out too, porch lights flicking on doors creaking open. One by one, they stood there watching as Karen, the self-appointed queen of the block, was led into the back of a police cruiser, shouting about her rights and her shortcut. It was cinematic, slow motion even, the kind of scene you replay in your head with a soundtrack. But the real justice was not just that she was caught red-handed. It was the ripple effect. The HOA board embarrassed by how long they had let her bully. The neighborhood held an emergency vote the next week. Karen was stripped of her committee, rolled barred from filing petty complaints without photographic proof, and slapped with fines for damages to my property. And the best part, every morning after, when I walked past that gleaming sign on the fence, neighbors would nod, smile, even clap. One elderly neighbor leaned in one day and whispered, "We have waited years for someone to stand up to her. You did what we could not." It was not just my victory, it was everyone's. As for Karen, she never got her shortcut back. In fact, with the new fence and deed, she was more boxed in than ever. And I will admit, the irony tasted sweet, because in trying to bulldoze boundaries, she ended up locked inside her own. Looking back, it still amazes me how something as simple as a fence turned into a battle of territory, pride, and power. What should have been a quiet suburban life turned into a war zone because one person refused to respect boundaries. But here is the truth. Boundaries are not just lines on a map or wood in the ground. They are respect. They are peace. They are the invisible walls that allow people to live side by side without stepping on each other. Karen never understood that. She thought the world bent for her shortcuts. She believed rules were suggestions and that other people's space was hers to claim. And in the end, that belief cost her everything. She tried to control. For me, the lesson was simple. You cannot always stop people from crossing your line, but you can decide how strong you make that line stand. So if you ever face a Karen of your own, do not let their noise trick you into silence. Document. Stay calm. Play the long game, because sometimes justice is not about shouting louder. It is about standing so steady that their chaos collapses against you. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if someone destroyed your fence for their shortcut? Would you have gone this far or even further? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you made it all the way to the end, comment "justice served." So I know you are part of the team that values fairness over entitlement. Until next time, remember this: respect is earned, boundaries are built, and entitlement always eventually locks itself in.